let me touch on something. I've looked into more cases, I actually should say Mary from my office, more cases with the CYS department than probably all other departments combined. And it's taken me a while to grasp one of the major challenges that I think we face. Many decades ago, the federal government and state government made a determination, based on whatever reasoning I can't say, that when it came to youth in America, young children in particular, that there was a responsibility for the federal government to step in and intervene, and state governments to step in and intervene. When that bridge was crossed, whether it was right or wrong, and I frankly have concerns about the government ever crossing that bridge, but when that was crossed, it put county governments and human beings in a very complicated situation. I continue, I've not, in spite of my belief that these stories that you share and the method that you use is not effective, in spite of that, I, in my office, continue to look into CYS. And here's what the conclusion that I've reached. Here's the conundrum. On one hand, you have a group of human beings on the 9th and the 11th floor of this building who have a responsibility given to them by the federal and the state government to ensure the health and safety of children. So a case is brought to their attention. They now, and it's very subjective, sit down and have to make a determination. Is there enough happening here that we, as a county, should get involved? And then once we get involved, what should we do? Should we take the child? Should we leave the child? Adoption, foster children, working with the family? And there are two sides to every decision. A couple of weeks ago, we sat in on a case. I'm not going to name any people, but it was a case involving a young newborn child. And the very specific case that we were talking about, I was listening, with this child, there were 6 people in a room. A year or so prior, a very similar case had occurred. And CYS had decided we don't think the situation is serious. A child died over the weekend. Not this weekend, but that weekend. They looked at it on a Thursday, Friday, something like that. Didn't seem to be something they should respond. The child was dead Monday morning. So now you're looking at a very similar situation, and believe me, that goes through people's minds. On the other hand, you have parents, and parental rights in America are vitally important. It's one of the reasons I have concerns about the government crossing the bridge many decades ago that said, we have to intervene, we have to step in, and we as government have to become the parents. I understand. If it were my children, Mary has said this numerous times, if it was her grandchildren, she'd be screaming at CYS workers. She'd be pounding on the door to do whatever she could to get her children back. But it is never that simple. And Don, I think you know this. So often we get information. It is never the way it's initially presented. Never, never, never. It is always different. And it's because there are always different sides to a story. But that's the challenge. And I will tell you, we will never be able to resolve these issues in this venue. We are not a courtroom. We have no authority over the courts. We have authority over CYS, but you have to understand the challenge that they face every single day. They're damned if they do, and they're damned if they don't. It seems like there's almost never a right answer. Now, it will seem clear to you, just as it would to Mary or it would to me, if it was my children or if it was my grandchildren, or people I was close to. I understand that. But it's an equal challenge, and I really don't think that we've all very often talked about the conundrum that the CYS workers are under. They're not all evil people. Are there bad employees? I'm sure there are, just like there are bad commissioners. But overall, I believe our CYS department is trying to do what they are challenged to do by the federal and state government, and that is to look out for the health and well-being of children. That's a tough thing to do. And it forces tough decisions.
Children when they're not, with no evidence of abuse or neglect.
That's what you say, but every time I've been told that, every single time, without exception, when we looked into the record, it wasn't the case. Now, I'm not familiar with the case that you're looking at. We'll look into that as well. But every single time that claim has been made, every single time, even from people recently, a very close friend of mine brought a case to our office that, wow, on the surface I was, how can this happen? Well, we dug into it and found there was much more information, and it was not as clear as it initially appeared. That's the reality, Donna. Not once.
You to have a meeting with Audrey and CYS officials.
That's not the way to resolve this.
Okay, what do you suggest? Because we tell you something, and you do listen to us. I know you do.
Yeah, and we don't just go to CYS.
Okay, and you go to DPW, right?
We've gone to DPW. We get information often from the people that you refer to us. And in names that you brought up even recently.
Do you talk to families?
Talk to families that have lied to us. And when we caught them, in the lies, Donna, then they didn't want to talk to us anymore. So this is not crystal clear. This is complicated. And I grant you, probably the biggest problem is the bridge that was crossed when the government said that counties have a core responsibility for the health and safety of children. That puts us as a county, whether you're talking courts, you're talking CYS, in a very difficult position. And you know the record is clear. There have been children. The Fisher case is probably the most famous case in Berks County, where they died and they were supposed to be okay because they were involved with CYS. Believe me, those types of situations weigh heavily on the people of CYS. And I'm going to add one more thing. When you take the opportunity to, and I'm going to use the word attack, people with whom you disagree, if you challenge the commissioners, the law's wide open. You can pretty much, and it's unfortunate, elected officials, the public can say pretty much anything they want. It's very difficult for us to prove liable. So I would say what you want. I do what I do, and I follow through with what I say I'm going to do. But on your Facebook page, you've challenged and attacked some employees. I would encourage you. You're walking a very, very fine line. And I've challenged you before. Be careful what you say. You say it about public officials, it's fine. We put ourselves out here. We ran for public office. If we can't take the heat, then we should quit the job and go do something else for a living. But that's not the case with public employees. And fairly recently, you recommended that a certain employee should be disbarred on Facebook. No evidence. Need to be very careful what's posted up there, because eventually that can come back to bite you. Stick to facts. If you don't have the facts, dig to find them. But don't make those kinds of accusations against non-elected employees. It damages your credibility, and it could end up costing you significant money for posting that kind that kind of false information. So I just wanted to share that.